Hello, everybody, and welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. You had Passover, you had Easter, you had the start of the NBA playoffs, so whatever you happen to be celebrating, I hope you guys had a fantastic week. We're going to coming you from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast studio. Keep getting better. John Schmeelk, Lance Medow with you. We are here, folks. It is draft week. We are 3 days from the start of the 2025 NFL Draft. We don't have many guests this week. We're going to have Sal Palantonio tomorrow. I'm working on something for Wednesday, which will be brief. Otherwise, it's going to be us, you, and taking a lot of calls at 201-939-4513. Mr. Lance, I'm sure you're happy this is here.
Absolutely.
And the pontificating can cease and stuff can actually start happening.
Yeah, thank goodness. I mean, as much as I love draft season, I think it becomes a little too much overkill at times. So it's actually a positive development that the draft is early this year.
It is.
Compared to previous years, normally we go into May with some of this. So the fact that it's the latter part of April, I think, is encouraging.
Just to give you an idea, my son was born on the second night of the draft, and that was April 30th. So that was almost like a full week.
Sure.
Or that was actually Saturday of the draft. So that was like a full week after what we have now. So absolutely.
Yeah, I remember you running out and not knowing.
Yep, Wando Robinson press conference. Put the jetpack on. Voo!
Over. Yes. Head to the hospital, and the rest is history.
Now. I should say 3 years ago, yes.
So we have some fond memories from a personal level, obviously intertwined with the draft. But in all seriousness, I mean, it is good that it's this week, and that then we'll have a roster to talk about with respect to the veterans who are now coming back into the building, starting today with the beginning of the OTA process on top of the young prospects. So, all of a sudden, the NFL offseason, in the blink of an eye, starts, it ends, and September's going to be here before you know it. I mean, that's the beauty. Even though it seems like we're months and ages away, I would argue it goes relatively quickly. But I think once you get past the draft, that all of a sudden is an indication, okay, hey, we're now in full veterans back on the field gearing up for the upcoming season.
Yeah, and the players did report today for the Giants. They've been here for other teams already, teams that have new coaches, things like that.
Yep.
But the Giants, their players reported today, so they're back in the building. We heard from Brian Daboll. Russell Wilson was finishing his media availability when Lance and I started the show. So I guess, Lance, why don't we go to Russ first, since we caught that. Not a whole lot there. I mean, he's obviously done this a million times. He's very polished. He says what he's going to want to say. He's talked about how he's thrown with some of the guys before he got here. Very excited to be in the building, get to know the guys. Him and Jameis Winston were asked by Brian Daboll at the first team meeting to kind of introduce themselves to the team and tell them what they're all about. But I think this is what we're going to get from Russell Wilson, man. He's very polished. He knows how to address the media, what he wants to say. He stays on message. And look, I think he just brings a nice stabilizing force here to this roster.
Well, and also the other thing that I think is intertwined and related to him is the fact that Russell Wilson has been with a few new teams over the last few years, John. So this is not anything new for him. He had to go through it in Denver. He had to go through it in Pittsburgh. And now he has to do it here in New York. So I don't think, even though there's been some movement on that front, he knows what it takes to establish himself as the quarterback, make sure he's on the same page with teammates. He talked about having some already off-season workouts with some of the tight ends and the wide receivers. They met on the West Coast. They also met in Atlanta. So he's already started that process, and you could say this is basically stage 2 for him. But I actually thought the most interesting thing that Brian Daboll had to say with respect to the quarterbacks was what you were hitting on, the fact that he did ask Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston to address the entire offensive room and sort of give a retrospect, I would say, of their careers, who they are, what they've been through. And I'm sure Jameis passed that test with flying colors. I mean, that man knows how to get in front of a group and light things up. I think that anybody who has been an NFL fan has been exposed to that. But, Russell brings a lot of experience into play. He's done a lot of winning with various teams throughout his career, and I think he's at this stage in his career where he can offer a lot to the younger guys on the offensive side of the ball and be sort of an extension of the coaching staff, where he can pick up things that worked and didn't work in other organizations and say, hey, this is where we need to get as an offense if we want to truly stabilize it across the board and not necessarily just under center.
I'm with you. I think that's 100% correct. So Brian Daboll spoke to the media as well. They kept digging into this. Well, what if you and Joe Shane don't agree on a draft prospect conversation? Well, and the answer is that you talk through it, you figure it out, you come to a consensus, and Joe Shane eventually has the final decision on that. But like I said last week when this conversation came up, the GM is never going to give the head coach a player he doesn't want to coach.
That's impractical.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to hurt the development of a player. So that's just something that's not going to happen. If the coach says, no, I don't want this guy, the GM's not going to force that pick. So I think even though the media didn't seem to believe the answer, but eventually they come to a consensus and agreement on something that works for the organization, and that's where they go. So not really much else from Dabes in that conversation to me, Lance. He was short and sweet, and they'll get this offseason program started here. You're going to have OTAs through the end of May, beginning of June. The week of the 16th, I believe, is mandatory minicamp, and then they're off.
Well, I think the basic emphasis of that question probably stemmed from the fact that if you do pick a quarterback at number 3, you want to make sure that everybody in the room has conviction on that topic. I think, and that's me interpreting things, John. So it's my personal opinion. I'm not saying this is where the media was coming from, but I think that may be where this story has emerged, that in the event the Giants do take a quarterback at 3, did the scouts, did the general manager, did the head coach, did the offensive staff all like that guy, and that they're purely behind them. That, to me, is maybe where it came from. But Daboll gave as detailed as a response as he could in terms of what the process is like, and he talked about that it's positive dialogue, and you have the scouts weigh in, and you want to hear what they have to say about what they may have learned about the prospect that has nothing to do with X's and O's. And even Joe Shane, if you recall, John, when Joe spoke to the media last week and had his pre-draft press conference, he may have not gotten into this exact topic, but he was asked about the process, and that's where it came up that he has final say. And he says, hey, there have been previous years, whether it's in Buffalo or here with the Giants, where a scout is very passionate about a player that they looked over for months. I mean, these scouts get attached to these players. You know, they know everything, upside down, inside out, you name it. They talk to the janitor probably at the college campus to determine what type of an individual this person is. And there have been times, he didn't give specific examples, but a scout gets up and makes a very strong case, hey, we should take this player in this round. And Joe said he'll hear him out or her out, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with him. And somebody has to make the decision. You can't have 17 people in the room and everybody saying, well, what do you want to do? So as the general manager, he will be able to put his full stamp of approval on it. But I think it's good when you air out everybody's feelings and opinions, because at least you know before the decision is made, John, that everybody had a voice in some capacity. Whether it was heard, whether it penetrated is a whole different story, but at least they had the platform to discuss and talk it out.
No question about it. All right. We have an updated list of players that will be attending the NFL draft on Thursday night. Remember, this is not a guarantee that all these players will be first-round picks. We've seen many years guys go into Friday that are attending, but just so people have the list, this is in alphabetical order. Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama. Jihad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama. Will Campbell, offensive tackle of LSU. Abdul Carter, defensive end, Penn State. Matthew Golden, wide receiver, Texas. Mason Graham, defensive tackle, Michigan. Maxwell Hairston, cornerback, Kentucky. Travis Hunter, DB/wideout, Colorado. That's how he's labeled. Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State. Will Johnson, defensive back, Michigan. Teteroa McMillan, wide receiver, Arizona. Jalen Milroe, quarterback, Alabama. Malachi Starks, defensive back, Georgia. Shamar Stewart, defensive end, Texas A&M. And Cameron Ward, quarterback, Miami. So those are the guys that will be at the draft. And I thought today might be a good time as we start draft week to kind of reset what we're thinking about with this draft. And I thought a good way to do that, Lance, would be kind of talk about what I think the team's goal should be to walk out of this draft now that we know what the depth chart looks like. The veterans are back as you try to build a team now, including this all-important draft class. So what would be your primary goals here, Lance? And you could assign like importance of positions by round if you want, which things are musts, must-haves, should have, would like to have. You can kind of organize this any way you would like.
Well, it goes back to a conversation that you and I had earlier in the offseason when we sort of pinpointed the team needs. But if I recall, we did that even before free agency started.
I think we did, yes.
So the dynamics have changed. Case in point, one of the positions that I was emphasizing was cornerback. But the fact that they brought in Paulson Adebo and you brought in Javon Holland, if they don't walk away with a corner and taking into consideration some of the youth that they have already on the roster, I'm not emphasizing that position.
Same for safety, right?
As much as I would. Correct. So that has changed. Interior defensive lineman is still a significant priority. And when we had our mock draft last week, I said, I want a guy that can provide pass rush ability. I don't want just a guy that's going to play first and second down and stop the run. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't find him in the middle rounds, but what I'm saying is if you're going to take a defensive lineman in the draft, I think you want somebody that offers versatility, maybe inside, outside play, but has proven even at the collegiate level, based on their usage, that they can get after the quarterback. And I think they have guys, based on what they did in free agency, that can help in stopping the run. Like a DJ Davidson, who is already on the roster. They brought in Roy Robertson Harris. He can help stop the run. Jeremiah Ledbetter, who was his teammate briefly in Jacksonville, he can stop the run. So I think what you want now in the draft is a little bit more ignition in terms of the pass rush. So that still has become a priority.
If I had one must-have position, Lance, that would be it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, no matter what, walk away with somebody from that position. It would be defensive tackle. And it would be the only position I would put into the must-have category. I could see scenarios where maybe another spot you don't walk away with somebody and you survive it. And look, would they survive? Sure. You can still have guys in free agency, et cetera, but I'm with you. Defensive tackle for me, and I'm happy you brought that up first, that would be in the must-have category for me. At least one, and if you come away with two, great, walking out of this draft.
Yeah, and I would say that, to further the point, I really look at that position on an island by itself, which I think you would agree, where I would not put, if you asked me to assess this roster right now, position by position, that they have to come out with another position, I don't feel that strongly outside of defensive tackle. Now, I know you had voiced the fact that you think getting a young quarterback is critical. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you, at least from the conversations that we've had, I've at least taken that away from what you have voiced.
And I will. My next category would be should have, or maybe would like to have.
So a little bit lesser.
Yeah. So I'll put it would like to have, okay, and would like to try hard to have. Into that category, I would put quarterback, and I would put guard. Those would be the two positions I would put into the next group. Where again, I think the roster is positioned as such where you could survive if you don't. But those are two spots because of age at those two positions, length of contract at those two positions. I would like to walk away from this draft with a guard or a quarterback. And frankly, I could argue offensive tackle. But the reason I'm not going to put that into this group is because it's such a shallow group of offensive tackle in the draft. You just might not have the opportunity to do that based on how the draft goes. So I'm not going to put that into this group. But yes, young quarterback. Again, this could be a developmental guy. It could be a first-round guy. It could be a day 2 guy. It can even be a round 4 guy if you want. But I would like a young quarterback walking out of this draft.
Well, just to piggyback off of the guard point, and that was one of the other positions we talked about before free agency started, they brought back Greg Van Roten, but he's on a short-term contract, so
and he's
there's
older.
No guarantee, correct, that he's going to be long-term planned. There's an opportunity. You draft a guard, he could be the backup this year. He may take over as a starter potentially a year from now. So that I would put right behind defensive tackle, not like you said, must have, but you got to start thinking and getting ahead of the curve based on what could come to fruition in 2026. I think Jermaine Illuminor, who they invested in a year ago with Andrew Thomas, and you brought in James Hudson in free agency, plus Stone Forsythe. And you know, John, that rotational swing tackle position fluctuates year to year. So if they don't walk away with a younger guy, you could go out in free agency next year and bring in somebody who is the emergency tackle. That's why I would not put tackle and guard in the same category. And I'm not saying that you were doing that.
I will say that is probably the most, aside from quarterback probably, though I could even argue it's more important than backup quarterback position. A good backup swing tackle is extremely important.
Well, because especially with Andrew Thomas's injury history,
Exactly.
it makes it even more urgent.
Well, that position impacts the most important player on your team, your quarterback. So that's why it's so important.
But I think you can get a solid veteran who can provide insurance if somebody falls down.
Sure.
The problem is
It might
that
cost you some, though.
No,
it's not going to come cheap.
It may cost you some, and also you're not necessarily going to have continuity in that department because the guard may play next to a different tackle year in and year out.
No, remember, you mentioned Greg Van Roten. Jermaine Illuminor also signed a 2-year contract. So last year for him, too. So are you trying to find the next guy up at that spot? Now, I think Jermaine Illuminor is younger than Greg Van Roten.
That's what I was going to get to.
And if they wanted to extend him, I think that would be a great idea. I don't know if they're thinking about that or they would consider that or whatnot. But that's the other reason why tackle was kind of the next position with me here, just because Illuminor is on the last year of his deal. And again, he's just turned 30. He's got plenty of good years to go. But that's why I would put it in the would like to have category. But again, I'm doing this in the reflection of what this draft class looks like. I might only have 8 offensive tackles in the whole draft that I think can develop into anything that's any good. So I'm not going to put it on the team that you got to go find one of those guys, especially when you know you're not picking one of 3, right? So at least you don't think you're picking one of 3. Then you get out of the first round. 5 of those offensive tackles might all be gone. You might have 5 off the board. You might have Connerly, Simmons, Banks, Campbell, Membo, all off the board. So you're down to what, 3 or 4 tackles in the whole draft that you even would be willing to take that you think can play at that spot. So that's why I'm keeping tackle as the top in the next group.
Yeah, because it may not be a realistic choice by the time you're on the clock. Illuminor, as you mentioned, recently turned 30, but the other reason why I think he'd be attractive to re-sign in addition to his performance is he has not been a long-term starter, John. There's not nearly as much wear and tear on him. He only really started to become a starter in 2022.
And he's a multi-positional player.
Yeah.
So you could put him anywhere across the line, except for center.
Correct. So that's why tackle and guard is a completely different conversation because Van Roten and Illuminor are on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of wear and tear and age. And that's why I feel they have somebody internal that they can invest in, and then you can use a free agent or maybe even a guard that you draft could develop into sort of a swing type of position where he can play inside and outside.
And there are a lot of tackles that people think are going to move into guard. So you could draft a guy that played tackle in college. You might think he's a guard, but you know what? Maybe he can stick out at right tackle and play for you there.
Yeah, we have seen movement from a variety of different young offensive linemen. Just like there are offensive linemen that have played left tackle in college, they started out on the right, and then they progressively moved to the left. So just because he's not pinned in at that spot doesn't mean that they can't test the parameters of his play during the course of practice. And then, of course, you once again, you brought up quarterback, and I'm a little bit different than you in terms of the quarterback philosophy because I'm thinking to myself, and I think we've had this conversation, if you take a quarterback who's not at 3, and remember we were looking at historically the chances of them eventually becoming the starter, if you recall, we had this dialogue, and there are some examples of guys like, of course, the exception to the rule all time of Tom Brady, and Russell Wilson is in that department, but Russell started immediately, so he doesn't fit in that bill. I just don't know if you take a quarterback in the 2nd round, the 3rd round, the 4th round, even if you feel good about him being a developmental guy, what are the chances that when you move on from a Russell Wilson or if you bring in another quarterback, that he's going to be the guy? See, if they were at the point where Russ wasn't in-house, if it was just Jameis Winston, I would feel a lot better that the quarterback you're drafting, he may get on the field this year. If that's the situation.
No, I agree.
I don't think Russ is here.
No, I don't think the guy that you're drafting will get on the field.
And that,
I agree with that.
Once again, makes me more concerned about develop all you want. We could talk about that till we're blue in the face. But I want to know realistically, is there a pathway for this guy to get on the field and take over the reins? And as the roster stands right now, that's the only way that I'm basing it, John. I don't see an absolute clear pathway for the guy that if you don't take him 3, 2nd round, 3rd round, that you can guarantee me that 2 years from now, he's going to be taking over the quarterback position and he's going to be running wild with it.
No, but I think there's a chance he can be.
There's a chance. Well, listen, there's a chance for a lot of things in life.
Well, no, but I think, and this is my point, at the quarterback position, it's such an important position. I want to give myself as many cracks at
and I get that.
bites of the apple as possible. I want to give myself as many throws of darts at the board. And again, selecting this guy, even if it's a 34th, or even if it's a trade up into the back end of the first round, and you're sending a 4th round pick out or something like that, right?
Yep.
Or back end of the pick 99. That doesn't preclude me, and let's hope this is not the case, the Giants are picking the top 5 next year and they see like a guy that they believe is a franchise guy, this pick wouldn't stop me from doing it. Then can you go back and say, well, then didn't you waste your 34th overall pick? Maybe. Or maybe that guy's your long-term backup and you're saving money at the backup quarterback position.
Because you don't have to make a big splash.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I know Jameis Winston is under contract for 1 more year.
Well, and that's another thing I'm taking.
So
into
you're not
consideration.
saving quite as much money on that situation. I got to double check what the reported guarantees are and how much dead money there would be next year for him if you let him go. But I just want to have the opportunity to hit. And I'll be honest with you, folks. If the Giants select one of Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shook, Jackson Dart with pick 34, I'm going to assume Shedeur Sanders is not going to make it that far, though. Never know. Is there a better chance? Heck, is there a much better chance? That guy is never the Giants starting quarterback for a full year than he is? Yep. Totally get that. Not arguing with you at all. And that's why I think, Lance, and this goes to your point, and even by my grades, this isn't how I would have it, so you can call me crazy, and maybe I'll shift my grades around to reflect my way of thinking. If I, right now, were picking from that next group, I think I'd take Milroe. And here's why. You know he's a long-term project as a full-time quarterback. So I think, I would hope, that fans are a little bit more patient with that. It's not, oh, you're 2-4, week 7, get Milroe on the field, get Milroe on the field, get Milroe on the field. I would hope if you level set properly, people are smarter than that. Number 2, unlike a Shook, unlike a Dart, even unlike a Shedeur, if Russell Wilson's your starting quarterback, I can still get Jalen Milroe on the field and he can help this team win games.
Because of his athleticism.
Great athleticism.
Yeah.
Even if you're not using him just as a quarterback, you can maybe even put him as a space weapon. This guy has running back skills. He's 220 pounds and he runs a 4.40, high 4.3s. You can use him in other aspects of the game. This guy won the academic Heisman. He's really smart. He can figure that stuff out and help you in different ways. So that's why that might be my lean right now. And I realize I've kind of been all over the place with that, but I think it's, as you go along, you kind of think about how you want to use these guys. And I'm always about trying to get as much upside out of the quarterback position as possible. And let's be honest, now, I think the floor is much lower as a thrower. Now he raises the floor as a runner. His athleticism, raises that floor a lot. But is Milroe as far along as a passer as a Dart or a Shook or a Sanders? No. But the physical traits, they are off the chart. So that's why I think right now, if you gave me all 3 of those guys on the board at the same time, as much as I love Tyler Shook's tape, and I do love it, I think I would probably lean Milroe for the reasons I just gave. And that's why I'm willing to put that in the would like to have category, because at least Milroe can give you some help this year, Lance, in addition to maybe training to be your future quarterback down the road.
No, and that's logical. The only thing, and you and I talked about this previously, is I don't like when another quarterback is put on the field and the plays are very predictable.
No, and they can't
meaning
be.
You run him every time
And
you
I
bring
agree
him
with
in.
that.
So you have
Yep.
to walk that fine line if you're going to utilize and tap into his athleticism. On a related note, I brought up the 2021 NFL draft class and the 2022 NFL draft class because I just want to emphasize my point here, John, if you would hear me out here.
Yeah, please.
And my point about quarterbacks that we've seen go in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounds and whether or not, and now the reason why I'm going back 3 years back so that we have enough time. Like I'm not going through the draft class from a year ago. So 2021, Kyle Trask went in the 2nd round to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 3rd round, the Vikings took Kellen Mond.
Is he even in the league anymore?
Mond, well, he was traded away.
Anyway,
if you recall.
It's not important. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, he's actually with the San Antonio Brahmas, I think.
That
a different league.
That sounds about
That
right.
should tell you all you need. But, that's a relatively high pick. And remember, Mike Zimmer, I don't think was necessarily behind that. Don't hold me to it. Davis Mills went one pick later to the Texans. Ian Book to the Saints. Sam Ehlinger went in the 6th round, but I don't really think that applies. Okay, so Trask had a legitimate shot. Brady retired, John.
Yep.
Okay, they could have promoted him. They went with Baker Mayfield, and that's worked out. I'm not criticizing the Bucks, but here's an example of you took Trask when you had Brady on the roster, and the thought process was, hey, maybe Kyle takes over as you develop him, right?
I'm not arguing with you.
No, and I'm not doing this to poo-poo on your point. I'm wanting to give tangible evidence to our viewers and listeners of where I'm coming from.
Hey, look, Lance, we did the math.
Yeah.
You had about if you wanted to go since guys drafted since 2000, and you just take the quarterbacks that have gotten to the 2nd round of the playoffs, right? Because anybody can get to the 1st round. You get 7-9 wild card team or whatever.
Yep.
Quarterbacks that have gotten into the 2nd round of the playoffs with players drafted since 2000, you're looking at about a 10 to 12% hit rate on day 2 of the draft. 1 out of every 9 or 10 guys that you pick.
That tells you all you need to know.
It's not great.
Yeah. But, once again, these are not examples from 1997
Correct.
we're giving you.
Yeah, no.
These are examples. There's been a 4-year window. This is the 2021 class. And we always talk about, I want 4 years to go by.
It's the end of their contract.
Without a doubt.
The end of the rookie contract.
So Mond, okay, Minnesota, they parted ways with Kirk Cousins. Mond didn't even last that long. Davis Mills had some starts here or there with the Texans.
He started a whole year.
He did, but
it was brutal, but he started a whole
correct.
year.
Had a few opportunities. It didn't pan out. And Ian Book is now with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's where he was last. So, and the Saints also have had some fluctuation. Correct. Have they not? At quarterback, okay? 2022, real quickly. Okay, Kenny Pickett was the only 1st-round pick that year. The next quarterbacks went in the 3rd round. Desmond Ridder in Atlanta. They traded Ridder away, okay? And Atlanta went out and got Kirk Cousins, so there was a pathway there. Tennessee with Malik Willis. He now did a really nice job backing up Jordan Love in Green Bay this past season.
In fact, all these guys are on different teams.
But there was pathways. Right. That's my point.
Yeah.
And then Matt Carroll with Carolina, he barely lasted. I believe he also got hurt, too.
He's on his 3rd team, I think.
Bailey Zappi is a good one to throw in here with New England. And all of these guys are on teams, coincidentally, where the starters got hurt or they moved on from starting quarterbacks. You could sit down and say, okay, there was an opportunity for all of these guys to run away with the starting job. Didn't happen.
No argument. All right, so offensive tackle, I have put in the now we're cooking category, because you like to have them, but maybe you can't get them. So I put that in now you're cooking. Then you have the okay, cool category, where it's like, all right, you picked the guy from that position. Cool, right? So in that group, Lance, I would put, and this is probably an order for me of things that I would be excited about based on just what the draft class looks like and I think what the Giants need. I think I would put edge, just because you could always use more edge guys.
Guys have gotten hurt.
Position, and it's a great edge class. So that's why I'm putting edge there.
Yep.
I'll put tight end. I'll go running back. I'll go linebacker. I think inside linebacker off ball is a sneaky need with McFadden last year of his contract, Okereke heading into the 3rd year of his. And then I put cornerback because, look, you can always use more quarterbacks. And then I put safety. And that would kind of be my list of, okay, cool. You don't need at those spots, but you could always use more players at those positions. And remember, if you end up picking Abdul Carter at 3, you can just check edge right off that group, and then you can eliminate that from the rest of the conversation. So to me, I think you're looking at day 2 guard, a defensive tackle type, maybe quarterback. And then, if Abdul Carter is going to be your 1st rounder, cool. If you can slide offensive tackle into one of those day 2 picks, that's great also. His defensive tackle is so deep. And then otherwise, if a great player is available in one of those other positions and the value is there, just take them. Just take them and be happy about it.
I would probably, interior linebacker, I'd move up a category.
Okay.
I think there's more of a need for that position the more and more we're having this conversation. So that's the only one I'd remove from okay.
So now we're cooking?
Yeah, I think now we're cooking because, A, you put an interesting point out there about McFadden's contract, the inability for them to stop the run last season. Okay, now part of that is what happened up front, but hey, your linebackers have to clean it up.
No, it's part of it. Sure.
Okereke and him coming off an injury. So I'd boost that up a little bit. interior linebacker. Outside of, hey, great if we get it. If we don't, it's not the end of the world. I think there's more of a need in that department.
I totally buy that. All right, let's get to your calls, folks. 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. Hashtag Giants Chat. Just a reminder, go check out our other podcasts. You have the Giants Huddle podcast. Thomas Dimitroff, is that up yet, Pearson, or it's on his way up? It'll be up shortly. Check that out. Former Falcons GM. We have a nice, good conversation about, we don't really go into prospects necessarily, but we do a lot on, guys, trust me, we've had a million shows about prospects. Go back the last 3 weeks, there's a million of them. So I wanted to kind of get the GM's perspective on certain positions, player types of different positions. Like we talked about, do you want the grinding back versus the explosive back? Do you want the, what are some of the other guys? The, kind of positions like that where the bigger edge versus the speedier upfield undersides, pass rushing edge. Do you want the 3 technique or the plug or a defensive tackle? We kind of talked about value of these certain positions to a GM, how you go about doing it. So it was a good conversation with Thomas. That'll come up later on today. Todd McShay will be coming up tomorrow on the Giants Huddle podcast. First timer for Todd. We've not had him on before, so I was excited to do that. It's kind of his approach to what the Giants should do. We really lock it on the Giants pick specifically because a lot of people probably haven't heard Todd much on what the Giants should do. So that was kind of our focus. We go about 15 minutes or so. And then draft season will come your way on Wednesday. And then we'll get to see if we can get one other huddle in before the draft. It depends if there's availability with our guest on Wednesday. Giants.com, Giants app, Giants.com/podcast. Search for Giants Podcast Network or draft season on your favorite podcast platform. All right, let's go to the calls. 201-939-4513 in the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. Dave in Phoenix will lead us off today. Hi, Dave.
Hey, guys. It's Jay in Phoenix.
I'm sorry, Jay. What's up?
I have 2 things for you real quick. I want to talk about running backs and then also just that third pick. And I'm wondering if you guys – because one of the things I've thought of is that I imagine the Patriots are really desperate for Abdul Carter. And if he's sitting there, would it make – and I'm not saying that we should do this. I'm just asking you guys your thoughts.
Sure.
Would it make us feel better to trade and acquire more picks in the second and third round by dropping back one spot and then drafting Shador or drafting Graham or something else? I just want to get your guys' thoughts on that.
No,
and
absolutely.
I have a couple comments about it.
No, that's fine. So just to give you an idea of how I would look at that, okay? I break my draft board into tiers, right? So the way I have it broken down, just to give you an idea of how I think about this, right, is that I have my blue chip players. Those are my guys I think could be future All-Pros. There's usually only a few of those in each draft. This year, I got 3 guys in that category, right? I got Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Ashton Genty. Only 3 guys I have in that category this year. That's it. Last year, just to give you an example, I had, let me see if I can bring up that board very quickly, see how quickly it opens up in good old Microsoft Excel, if I can find it. I'll go off memory. Last year, I believe I had all 3 quarterbacks, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt. I might have had Brock Bowers in there too. So either it's 6 or 7, depending on, I'm trying to remember exactly how many there were. But this year, there's only 3. Then I have my red chip players. Those are kind of the guys I would normally be comfortable taking in the top 10 in any draft. The guys that I think could be future Pro Bowlers, right? Last year, I had Roma Dunze in that category. I had J.C. Latham in that category. And I think about it, I believe I had Brock Bowers in that category last year. And that's what that category looked like. This year, I have 1 player in that category. That's it. I have Cam Ward. That's it. So if I'm trading out of 3 to pick Carter, I'm not getting a tier 2 player. Again, this is according to my rankings and my opinion, and Lord knows they're not going to be right. You go into tier 3, which are my regular round 1 grades. I consider this, you're going to get a good starter, right? You're going to get a well above average starter. Maybe he'll make 1 Pro Bowl over the course of his career on a particularly good year, but you're going to put him in there. You're going to feel really good about him being that type of player. Think of a Justin Tuck type, right? I don't think Justin was ever all pro. He maybe made 1 Pro Bowl along the way, but he was a really good starter for you, right? So that's what I have in my next category, and that's where you get into the Mason Grahams, the Tedero McMillans, the Will Campbells, and that next group. So if I'm trading out of 3 to go to 4, now, if you love Shedeur Sanders and he's going to be your pick, then yeah, that's a no-brainer, because you're going to get him before anyway. But if you're going to pick Abdul Carter, it all depends at how deep and far you think that talent drop is from Carter to that next group of players. So I would make, if I consider that, I would make the Patriots pay maybe not a quarterback level premium, but close to it, because I'm not just dropping, one grade level on my board. I'm dropping 2 to get to my next player on my particular stack. While Gentry's graded as an all-pro player, let's not have this conversation again. I'm not going to pick a running back in the top 5. So that's kind of where I'm at, which is how I would probably say no, Lance, unless the Patriots really wanted to overpay, which to move up 1 spot, I'd be surprised they would.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I wouldn't do it because I don't think the pro of gaining the extra assets that the caller laid out is going to be more beneficial than the player you're potentially sacrificing.
I mean, if I can get like they're 2 and 3 this year, which are at the top of the rounds, maybe I'd think about that, but they're not giving you a 2 and a 3 to move up 1 spot.
If this was 6 or 7 spots, it's a different story.
And by the way, they need an offensive player. They don't need a defensive player. They need an offensive tackle, and they need a wide receiver to help.
They definitely need an offensive tackle. There's no doubt about that. I think New England has a number of needs. I don't know if they're necessarily saying Abdul Carter is going to change completely the direction of our franchise.
And Jay, here's the problem, right? Let's say the Giants were more amenable to this, even, right? And they say, all right, look, we're picking Shador anyway. So if we move back a spot, it doesn't matter. So the Patriots give him a 2, right, to move up 1 spot. Just 1, 2, and that's it. Then the Patriots have to wait till round 3 to select an offensive tackle to protect Drake May or a wide receiver for Drake May to throw it to. If I'm the Patriots, I do not feel great about that scenario. So I don't think that's a realistic one, to be honest with you.
That's more of a reason why you probably wouldn't want to sacrifice additional picks if you're New England, because this is a critical year.
Correct.
Now that you brought in a new offensive coordinator, you have a new staff with Mike Vrabel.
New head coach.
You want to give protection to Drake May following his rookie year. I mean, this is the year you hold on to your picks if I'm New England.
Or you try to get more.
Yeah, this is not the year, especially to sacrifice it for 1 spot. It doesn't make much sense.
To get a player at a position that's not a particular need.
I don't get it. I would not understand the rationale.
All right, Jay, what's your next point? Oh, Jay left? He's gone? Okay. Call back, Jay, if you have any more points you want to make. 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. Let's go back to the phones and say what's up to Greg in Atlanta. Greg, what's going on, man?
Hey, how you doing, John and Lance?
We're good, man. What's going on?
All right, man. I'm just calling to make one point, I guess. But I'm listening to all the chatter about Russell Wilson and what we should do with the 3rd pick and all of that. To be honest with you guys, I'm real comfortable with Russell Wilson at quarterback because I can't think of the last time the Giants had, other than Eli, a 30-touchdown, under 10 picks guy. We just never had that. And it's just going to be interesting for me this year because the Giants are normally predicated on defense and running the ball. Daboll wants to throw the ball, and now we got a quarterback who can throw the ball. So I just think we're going to be – and the reason – I'm going to say this and I'm gone.
Sure.
But the reason why I'm saying everything I'm saying is because I really don't think our team was that bad. I just think the guys didn't play to their full potential. I don't know if they gave up on the team last year, and I know y'all hate to hear that, but I think they stopped playing, and I think when you give them somebody to rally behind – those same players that we're saying is below average and average on our team, like the Giants got a lot of needs. Watch how some of those needs just take care of themselves when you got a high-level quarterback playing the position. And that's all I want to say. You guys have a great day.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate the call, man. Good stuff. I will just say this as I bring up Russell Wilson's stats. I don't know, maybe you have it up in front of you.
Yeah, I have it in front of me.
When's the last time he had 30 touchdowns?
Last time he had 30 was 2020, his second to last season with the Seahawks. He had 40 touchdowns that year.
So I don't think I call him necessarily a 30 touchdown under pick lock. 25? Sure.
I think that's more realistic. Yeah.
25? Sure. I think that's something that's reasonable. The under 10 picks, I think, is the important number there. He's a guy that's always protected the ball extremely well. So, yeah, I think it's going to help. Is he the same Russell Wilson from 2019 or 2017 when he's winning Super Bowls or whatnot? No, he's not that guy anymore, and that's fine. But I don't think not drafting a quarterback has anything to do with the fact that Russell Wilson's on the roster. If they had a guy at 3 that they believe is the guy and they think he has a high-end ability to eventually be a better player than what Russell Wilson is, they would pick that guy regardless. But so that's why I look at it at least. But yeah, look, will Russell Wilson raise the level of other people a little bit just because of what he's been through in the league and his veteran leadership and understanding the game, his smarts, his intelligence, his experience? I think that's probably true.
Well, in comparison to what they worked with last year.
Exactly.
I mean, we're
point,
talking
yes.
about night and day. So I agree with you there. Going back to the last caller's point, I think, once again, you can't get caught up in just looking at this year's roster and saying the draft is only about 2025. This year's draft class is well beyond 2025 because even if you're outside of the first round, you get a 4-year contract. So that's why, circling back to the quarterback conversation, they have Jameis Winston. So the development quarterback conversation, I don't look at as a must-have because the journey for that quarterback to get on the field outside of being third on the depth chart is slim. But if you take a quarterback number 3 overall because you're very high on that quarterback and you take into consideration Russ is 36, there's a lot of wear and tear. He also missed time with Pittsburgh last season due to the calf issue. And Jameis has had interception problems throughout his career. Yeah, by all means, take a quarterback who everybody in the room really loves, and then there's a chance he gets on the field sooner rather than later. I'm looking at it more of, if you're going to take a quarterback in the second round or beyond, if you don't get them, I don't think it's the end of the world. But if at 3 they feel, hey, we have a guy that we believe 2 years from now can be the one running the offense, and you don't turn away from doing that, especially when you pick this high.
All right, 201-939-4513. Jay is back from Phoenix. He has a couple more points he wanted to make. Jay, what's going on? We lost you there, pal.
That's okay, no problem. Just the thoughts on the running backs real quick. So there's just 2 of them. I know the Giants have had a number in for top 30 visits, which is great because I would like to see him add to that room. But 2 guys that I have watched over the years beat up my college team, so I went to BYU. Devin Neal at Kansas.
Good player.
And, oh, my gosh, he is a fun player to watch. He just is 2 years in a row, just watching him just pounding the Cougars. And then the other one was Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech.
Also a good player.
He's a fun player. He's a fun player to watch. So, I think one you can maybe get in the 3rd, maybe 4th, the other one maybe in the 5th. But, I think those 2 would be great to add to the Giants' running back room.
Yeah, and again, I think the interesting thing, Jay, and you're good, is that your last point?
Yeah, that was my last point.
All right, appreciate it, Jay. Thank you. Those are kind of more of your between-the-tackle masher types. I mean, Neal has some quickness to him, but he's not a home run hitter. He doesn't have like a 5th gear. But those are more the between-the-tackle types, and then Tracy is more of like I'm not going to go with 3rd down, but he's a more explosive back in that combination. Where do you think they're going to go, Lance? Do you think they're going to lean more towards the grinder to complement Tracy, or do you think they're going to lean more towards the speed, explosive, quicker guy to complement Tracy?
I mean, I would think it's more practical to look for the grinder, especially since, Tracy was drafted last year in the 5th round, and I'm not saying that he's a guarantee to stay fully healthy, but, Devin Singletary is a veteran who's not necessarily in their long-term plans. I would think you could utilize a complementary back. Eric Gray is still on the roster, 5th rounder from 2023. And, he has a bigger frame to work with. And I think he's shown some flashes. So it's not as if the end of the road is there. And Dante Miller, who I have a personal connection to because he played for Columbia, can give you even more of a burst. Is this the year that, he gets on the field a little bit more? Perhaps. I think there are maybe some potential players on the back end of this roster that I just don't think have had the opportunity to be tapped into. So you don't have to go after a running back early in the draft. If they want to take somebody in the middle round to the later round, I think a complimentary back is probably the most sensible based on need. And, here's the other thing. If you're going to draft a running back out of this year's class, you want to get him on the field because you've got Eric Gray and Dante Miller already, John. My point is, what is the purpose of drafting a running back and you're going to store him? Or
no.
You're going to put him on the practice squad.
You draft him.
Yeah, so that's why my response to your question is you need to get somebody that offers something different from Tyrone Tracy because Tracy's young enough that you're not saying to yourself, oh, no, we have to watch it, how many touches Tracy gets at this point
Well,
in
that's
his
what I'm
career.
saying. But I mean, you can get, but it depends. Do you want to get the complimentary back that's going to do short yardage stuff, or do you want to get the complimentary back that's going to be more of your Jaden Blue, 4.39 40 type? That's more of your explosive receiver type.
I think short-term yardage is what you need in goal line situations, in 3rd and 1s, those type of situations. But, I mean, I want to get more out of the back than just putting him on the field for a yard or two.
I know that. Of
So,
course.
I want him to offer something beyond that. That's why I call them complementary backs. Short yardage situations, and then you also feel good that they could take on more, let's say, hypothetically speaking, if Tyrone Tracy got hurt and had to miss some time. I mean, I feel good. You've got Devin Singletary on the roster, but he, once again, is not somebody that you're going to guarantee me he's going to be on the team for X amount of years. So that complimentary back, there's ample opportunity for him to get on the field this season.
J-Mac, I'm going to go out of order here. Let's go to line 2, Alex in Syracuse. He's up next. Hi, Alex.
Hey, guys. How are we doing today?
What's going on?
Hey, so thinking about quarterbacks in the draft a lot, I got a quarterback draft question, but I did a little bit of statistical analysis that I kind of want to run by you guys. So I always get bothered when people talk about quarterbacks as though they are the entirety of a football team and they attribute win-loss records to them. And the way that we talk about statistics in relation to quarterbacks, I think, doesn't give a full picture of how much like the offensive line and the weapons around them affect how well a quarterback plays season to season. So I was looking through some stats, and I was looking at quarterback ratings, and I did a sort of a deep dive for myself because I didn't really know how those are created, and I won't go into all the details. I looked at all the different formulas, and so I have a pretty good sense now of how quarterback rating works, at least up to a certain point. But it does take into account things like pressure rates and drop balls and things like that. So I think it is, while not perfect, the best statistic we have for sort of analyzing an individual quarterback's play outside of the system.
What was it? I'm sorry, Alex. What was the stat?
The quarterback rating.
Quarterback QBR or quarterback rating?
QBR.
Okay. Yeah. Because QBR takes into consideration scrambling and running and stuff like that. That's the for the fans that don't know. That's like basically the proprietary ESPN stat that basically tries to combine all that stuff together.
Exactly. Yeah. That one. So yeah.
Yep.
QBR. So what I did is I went back. ESPN has that stat, I think, starting in 2006, basically.
Okay.
So I went back and I wrote down basically every quarterback that made the top 10 in QBR from 2006 up through last season. And obviously, if they had it more than one season, I just wrote down all the different seasons that they made the top 10.
Okay.
So that's 19 seasons. So my question for you, and this is leading to my promise, but quick pop quiz.
Yes.
In 19 seasons, how many different quarterback names do you think made the top 10? So theoretically, it's as many as 190, which is not. How many names do you think are on that list?
Out of a pool of 190 is what you're saying?
Well, no, because you can have a maximum of 100. If it was 10 different quarterbacks every year, you'd have 190, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
But obviously, you're going to have a lot of repeats. I would probably say it's less than half of that. I would probably say 75.
I'll go with 80. A little bit higher.
Both really good guesses. The actual number is 62.
All right. It's not bad.
Which already starts to show you like sort of how hard it is to find that caliber of quarterback.
Yeah.
And then, so here's what I'll just tell you. I won't ask you this one. Here's what I'll tell you. If you take out the guys who only made it one time, which I would argue a lot of these guys are really good quarterbacks, but, they're those guys that kind of live on the edge of that top 10 quarterback, and they made it in one season and not. So that's 26 names. Now you're down to, 36 or whatever. If you take out the guys that only made it 2 or 3 times, which again is still impressive, you got 15 names. 15 names in the last 19 seasons are guys that were top 10 quarterbacks at least 4 times in terms of QBR. And again, a lot of those guys are like 10 times, 11, they're the names that you would expect. Breeze and Brady and Mahomes. Russell Wilson happens to make that list, right? So Manning barely makes it. 15 names. So it just shows you how hard it is to find those guys. And this is where I'm getting to. Here's my point.
Yeah.
What I also did is I went back and I looked at, specifically for those 15 names, I didn't do all 62. I went back because ESPN also has QBR for college quarterbacks.
Okay.
And so I went back and I looked at those 15 guys and where they ranked in terms of QBR, specifically the season that they were drafted, but even a few seasons before that.
Sure.
And one trend you'll find is that all of those guys were top 10 QBR guys at very least the year that they came back, they came out into the draft. And a lot of them were even like the year prior to that. Now, again, a lot of times the other 9 guys that were with them were people that were drafted that you never heard from again. So I'm not saying it's like a surefire thing, but I will say that like it's there. The numbers support it.
Well, I think Alex, your point being that the odds if someone's going to become a top 10 QBR quarterback in the NFL, odds are when they were coming out, they were going to be a top 10 QBR quarterback. It doesn't mean that if you're a top 10 QBR in college, you're going to become a top 10 QBR in the NFL.
Exactly.
But if you are a top 10 QBR quarterback in the NFL, you are more likely than not, and probably very, very likely, to be in the top 10 in your final year in college, is basically what you're saying.
Well, it also relates to, that's why those guys went high in the NFL draft too,
right. Yes.
right? The higher you pick the quarterback, the more likely the guy pans out because of what he did in college.
So what's the conclusion, Alex?
Yes, thank you. So here's what I'm getting at. So doing that for this year, personally, I'm a big Cam Ward guy. I'm serious. I like Kyle McCord a lot. I think that's an interesting name that people are starting to talk about a little more lately. I also like Milroe for the trade. There's one name that people talk about him, but not a lot. And he actually has, for the last 3 years, been a top 20 at least QBR, top 10 in this last year, and that is Dylan Gabriel. And I went back and watched his tape, and I kind of get on an eye test maybe why he doesn't like jump off the page to people, but when you go back and look at the tape and you look at the numbers, I just wonder, and this is my question for you two, of all the names that are mentioned, he really seems to fall off the list, and I just kind of wonder maybe why people aren't talking about Dylan Gabriel a little more, and if maybe that guy could potentially be the ultimate sleeper in quarterbacks in this draft. That's my question for you.
No, Alex, good question. I would say his size. I mean, Lance is going to jump on top of me and come after me here. I would say his size for sure would be number one.
5'11", by the way, for everybody to understand.
He's not 5'11".
I'm just saying that's what he's listed at.
Well, hey, Pearson, do me a favor. Hand me that spreadsheet right behind you, the paper right there. Let me see what he measured at the combine here. I believe he was 5'9" something at the combine, but I will double check that just so I have the numbers in front of me.
He's taken the liberty of 2 inches over his collegiate career. So
what's the most you've inflated your height in like an official height situation? Have you ever claimed you were like 5'9" to anybody?
No, I've never done that. No,
just curious.
Absolutely not. No. I mean, I got nothing to really benefit at this point, especially since my NBA hopeful playing days are over. So it is what it is.
You don't want to hurt your draft stock.
No,
right?
I do not. Yeah.
No, exactly.
A little bit worried. Don't want that to come back to bite me.
Quarterback Gabriel. Here we go. Oh, actually, you know what? I take that back. 5'11" and 1/8". So 5'11", 205.
So no fibbing.
I mean, I would say watching him at the Senior Bowl, even if I was to bet on a guy that I thought could be a really good backup for 10 years in the pros, I think Dylan Gabriel might actually be one of the safest bets in the draft. Like, I think, to your point, Alex, I think he has a fairly high floor because he was in college forever. What do you have, a 6-year college career, right?
19 to 24.
How many games started did he have?
He started in 12 for Central Florida, then 10 the following year. 2021 was really the only year he didn't start double-digit games. Oklahoma, 2 double-digit
50
seasons.
starts.
And then Oregon, 63 total.
63 starts.
Yep.
He's played a lot of football. Gets the ball out on time.
Yep. Good completion percentage.
Pretty accurate.
Yep.
So I think he checks all those boxes, but I just think with the size factor, and he doesn't have the biggest arm either, it's fine, especially in the intermediate area, it's fine. I just don't think that people believe he has the type of athletic and physical traits that would yield a high ceiling outcome. But would it shock me if someone picked Dylan Gabriel at the end of the 3rd round in this year's draft? No, absolutely not. Could he be better than McCord and Will Howard and guys like that? Sure. He might have a longer NFL career than Jalen Milroe for all we know. Doesn't mean he has the upside or he'll be as good, but Dylan Gabriel is going to be in the NFL for a very long time. He is a very good college quarterback, and who knows, maybe he'll be more than that. Maybe he'll go the Drew Brees route and figure out all those things that Drew Brees figured out with arm angles and finding holes in the offensive line to complete those passes. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
And I would say maybe the talent around him has also impacted how people look at him in terms of what he worked with at Oklahoma.
Because there was so much talent around him.
So they're
Especially
nervous about, well, what could he do? Now, granted, he was at Central Florida previously, but remember, it's the caliber of the competition that you play to. Now, just to give our audience an idea, if you go based on ESPN's total QBR rating for college football this past season, Cam Ward was number 1, Dylan Gabriel was number 2, Curtis Rourke was number 3. Shedeur Sanders was 16th. Now, this is just one item.
Dart was 4.
Dart was 4. Correct. I stopped at the top 3. Let's go back a year.
And
just out of
Milroe
curiosity.
was 9. And where's Shook on that? I'm curious.
Milroe was 8. And then you said Shook. Let's see. Shook. 22.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, just out of curiosity, only a year. But let's go back to last year, John, okay?
Sure.
Jaden Daniels was 1, okay? He had a nice rookie year. Bo Nix was 2. He had a nice rookie year. J.J. McCarthy, unfortunately, got hurt. And Dylan Gabriel popped up again in that category. He was 4th, just to give you an idea.
I give you an idea. Milroe was
9th.
last year, so he was top 10 both years. Again, a lot of that has to do with the running, because running is put in consideration here.
Now, Caleb Williams, who went number 1, he was 11th coming out.
Penix was 10.
Okay? 2022. Jalen Daniels was 1. Hendon Hooker was 2. C.J. Stroud was 3.
Jalen Daniels, not
Daniels. Yes,
Jaden.
correct.
I just wanted to make
Jalen.
sure that the fans heard that correctly.
Yes.
From Kansas.
And then Bo Nix was 4. Caleb Williams rounded out the top 5. Drake Mays popped up, by the way, in the top 10. We've seen his name. Michael Penix Jr. was just outside
Bryce Young
the top
was
10.
8.
J.J. McCarthy was 16th. And Jaden Daniels was 18th. Jaden Daniels from LSU, we're talking about, in 2022. So it's interesting if you see several names, right, in the same category.
But look,
for multiple years.
I think to Alex's point, if you're like 50th in college QBR, I wouldn't draft that guy high. Probably not the best idea.
I feel like there's a video game concept that we're trying to scratch the surface of.
No. I think to the point that there is a limit to which college production does lead to NFL production in some way, shapes, or form.
Sure.
Where if you're going to have zero NFL production, zero college production,
then it's highly unlikely you're going to flip the switch.
Yes.
No, I'm completely with you.
Which, again, I don't think tells us any secrets we already didn't know. I think we already knew that. But anyway, all right, we got a meeting we got to get to right at 1:30 here. So let's go to Scott in New Mexico. He'll wrap us up today. Hey, Scott.
Hi, guys.
What's up?
Hey, Scott.
I've already made it known last week that I think Abdul Carter is just going to change the dynamics of the Giants, so he's still my number 1 choice.
Sure.
But here's my question, since you have to go shortly. Is there any possibility, and what would the draft capital cost you? Because I'm interested in the Giants winning next year, not in 2 years. In other words, for a playoff spot. Is there any scenario you see, or any way the Giants could work it, so they could get both Abdul Carter and Shedeur Sanders in the same draft?
Yeah.
And what kind of draft capital would you have to give up, including players like Thibodeau, for example, and maybe a high draft choice for next year? And is it realistic? Because if you could get both of those guys in the same draft, it gives you a real link up to get to where you want to go next year.
Well,
So
Scott, I'm just telling you,
question.
if your only concern is winning this year, don't trade up for Shedeur Sanders.
Okay.
Because he's not going to help you win this year.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, Scott, look, I think this is not me killing Shedeur. I'd say this about every quarterback in this class. I don't think anyone in this class, and you might even be able to include Cam Ward in this in year 1, I don't think any of them is better than Russell Wilson is right now.
But the 3 quarterbacks in the East, the division we have to win, all 3 have the same things in common. They're all extremely mobile quarterbacks.
Dak Prescott's not mobile anymore.
What was that?
Dak Prescott's not mobile anymore.
Well, he seemed mobile unless he's hurt badly and can't run anymore.
Well, he's certainly not a statue.
No, he's not a statue, but I wouldn't consider him a runner.
No, he's not an overwhelming runner. But
he's not Jalen Hurts. He's not Jalen Hurts.
No, he's not the threat of Jalen. But Dak can extend plays if healthy.
I understand that.
He's more than suitable to do that.
I'm looking just at the division, and you have to win the division. So that was my central point. I know you have to go, so I'll get off the line. But basically, I was trying to see if we could get 2 out of the top 10 and what draft capital would you have to give up in order to do that, depending upon what the Giants' interest is.
All right.
And
No,
I'll
fair
let you
point.
guys go.
Thank you, Scott. No, that's okay. Look, you're not going to be able to get back into the top 10. That's going to cost you way too much. You're looking at probably your third round. You have to trade your 2, at least one of your 3s this year and your 2 next year to get up inside the top 10.
You eat away at the substance of your draft.
Correct. If Shedeur drops out of the top 10 and you're getting to like pick 20 right before Pittsburgh, something like that, I think Daniel Jeremiah did the math. It was a 3 and a 5 from this year's draft class to move up to like 20, which wouldn't be prohibitive. It would be your good 3, not your bad 3. It would be the 64th pick. So that's kind of what, or 65. Sorry, that's what you'd be looking at to move up ahead of Pittsburgh with your 3rd and your 5th.
Here's my feeling to answer.
And I wouldn't do that, by the way. I would just sit at 34 and I would pick.
If Shedeur Sanders, let's say, goes to New Orleans at 9, okay, there's a lot of speculation that's going to happen. Okay. You have the 3rd overall pick. If you're that high on Shedeur Sanders, then take him at 3.
That's absolutely correct.
We're talking about 6 picks, people.
Correct.
Okay? It's
That
not
is
worth
absolutely
giving
correct.
up 2 2s or an extra 3 for 6 spots in a draft if you feel that good about Shedeur Sanders.
That's correct.
It's not worth it.
Yes. Now, it's different if you're willing to pick him at like 25, then I get don't pick him at 3. That
Correct.
I understand.
Yeah, but
you're
I'm,
right.
I'm
Lance is
going
right.
based on the projection of where he's going.
Lance is
Listen,
right. If you're willing to pick him in the top 10, just pick him at 3. 100%.
What are we talking
Absolutely,
about?
Absolutely, 100%.
Why are we stressing out over
That
this?
is correct.
It's not worth it. That would be overthinking on steroids.
Because then the top 10 grade with the positional value should push him ahead of Abdul Carter anyway.
Because of what he can provide to you even down the road. I'm not even basing it based on what he can offer you in 2025.
All right, Lance, I'm not gonna make you too much. Give me predict the Giants' first 2 picks for me before we say goodbye today.
Position or players?
I'm a players.
Okay. Well, I would stick with Abdul Carter at number 3.
Okay.
That's what I would emphasize here. And then I've been thinking about this a little bit more since our mock draft. And if you remember, I went guard.
You went Donovan Jackson.
But I'm going more towards, I think, Milroe or Shook.
Oh, okay.
We'll go to them.
Which one?
I would lean more towards Milroe.
Okay.
In the high second round.
You are in agreement on this.
That's where I would go.
Oh, I hate that so much.
Because I was going back and forth, and I could say, because I'm not sold that, the substance of the quarterback may even be there.
No, might not
there's
be.
always going to be a team that to me is going to get late into the first round, and they're going to take a quarterback that I don't think most people expect.
And I'll just say this, and I'll just leave this real. And you're right. Someone could trade for ahead of the Giants and the Browns, like the
Without a
Saints,
doubt.
for example,
Yep.
to make that pick. If the Giants don't want to pick a quarterback at the top of the second round, it could be a prime situation. They might be able to move back a little bit and pick up some extra draft capital for a team trying to move up 4-1. Just something to think about. All right, guys. Lance, enjoy the draft.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good.
For Lance Medow, I'm John Schmeelk. That's Big Blue Kickoff Live from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. For Lance Medow, I'm John Schmeelk. Thanks for joining us on Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants.